Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. I have Paul Price here today. Paul Price is a genius, uh, and we're going to talk about some amazing things that he's been involved with. And Paul, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I'm a 57-year-old man. I'm a research scientist in the field of gravity modification. I've written two papers on the subject. Gravity as a mass unit, otherwise known as vortex gravity control, and the other one is gravitational propulsion in a fluid membrane, a new propulsion methodology,
Wow.
both dealing with an etheric model. I'm a writer. I've written the Prophecy Chronicles series of books, and I currently have two new books out, Tyrus and the Spooky Files. And I don't know if you had a chance to read those yet, Michael, but if you did, I hope you enjoyed them.
I've
And
looked at them, and
I
it looks
used to be
pretty interesting. I got a chance to look at them. Look
great,
really interesting. So yeah, I'll jump in deeper definitely after the show. Good.
great. And I used to do a podcast at one time or several, from the Truth Files, the Prophecy Chronicles show, to um, the Rick Factor, which Rick is my nickname in the Paul Richard Price show. So I'm I have a pretty shoot. Some people have called me a Renaissance man, I guess, and I've been tested with an IQ of above 173. So I even have Einstein beat, and I've been involved not how should I put it, not intentionally on my own part. But since I was 7 years old, I was tested, found out that I had not only extreme genius, but I had a parapsychic ability
Mm.
where I was able to, where I was precognitive.
Wow.
And it's weird when I get into those states, Michael, where I start seeing visions, usually when I'm in my sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I end up projecting myself inside another person and seeing what they're going through.
Wow.
I don't know if that makes sense to you or not.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But as a child, they did a Zener card test on me, and I was taken out to Camp Hero. And my father knew about Camp Hero, and I can go into more detail about that, how I found out that my father uh, was a contractor with the CIA during Operation or the Phoenix program.
Mm.
And I didn't find out about that until a certain person who was going by the name of Daniel David Moore.
Mm-hmm.
His real name was Michael Aquino, was sent into my life by former president, now deceased, George H.W. Bush. All because I came up with an idea when I worked at the Johnson Space Center, and I worked in the cafeteria at the time, where I came up with an idea of a system called the electromagnetic pulse reaction engine.
Wow.
And it was just something that popped in my head, and it was like a simulation that I could see in my head that I couldn't put away, if you understand what I'm saying. I guess I have that same ability that Nikola Tesla had
Yeah.
about doing simulations. And I ended up telling people about it because I didn't think it would work. For my, at the time, basis in science, I had no idea that particular type of a propulsion system would work. In effect, what it does is generates a plasma, which is being railed out by an electromagnetic field. And it pulse detonates the plasma, which allows the craft to have linear acceleration. Now, you've heard of the Project Aurora, the Aurora program, have you not? Aurora?
Uh, Now, tell us about that.
Well, the Aurora program first came to light in the 19, I think, 84 budget, congressional budget, and it was a line item, and it was under the classified section. the thing is, they were developing newer technologies to get us into the hypersonic realm and even go into orbit using these techs or using this technology. And what happened was, from what I was able to find out when I got fired from NASA, of all things, for talking about sensitive compartmented information,
Hmm.
which at the time I didn't know. I didn't know that what I was talking about had any similarities to what NASA and the Air Force were working on.
Wow.
But I was terminated from employment at that time. And my friend, he was a security guard. He's now retired, I do believe. Ron Jeffries came and told me at the end. I said, "Why was I fired?" He goes, you were speaking about sensitive compartmentalized information." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He goes, "You know that invention that you were talking about?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "NASA and the Air Force were working on a classified program with identical technology to what you were discussing.
Mm.
They thought that, number one, I had either listened to somebody talk, and I worked in the cafeteria, and you know how people, even in the cafeteria, they sit amongst themselves, and when they shouldn't be talking, they talk. I never heard that. I knew nothing about it. And they thought maybe I had accessed some sort of classified computer system at JSC. I never did that. And then he made a mention. This was before it became public. He made a mention. He goes, "They thought maybe you had remotely viewed
Mm.
the information." And I didn't know what remote viewing was at the time.
Yeah.
This was back in 1989, 1990 timeframe.
Right.
And I said, "Well, what's remote viewing?" He goes, "It's classified," but he goes, "It's kind of a psychic thing." And I go, "Okay." Well, soon after that,
So Paul, how did you get the job at NASA to begin with? So you're working in the cafeteria. You're a genius, and you're working in the cafeteria. What's wrong with this picture?
well, I have a medical issue. I have epilepsy, and my ultimate goal was to become an astronaut. Well, I couldn't become an astronaut after I had 13 grand mal seizures.
Yeah.
That was no way. You know about that. But I wanted to work for the space program. I hadn't had a college degree at the time.
Wow.
However, I would have done anything to have been a part of NASA at the
Yeah.
time. And I went as far as riding over 20 miles to and from where I lived in Pasadena, Texas, out to Webster, Texas, where JSC is located, and would
Hmm.
ride all the way back and harass and hound the manager there until he put me to work.
Nice.
And I finally got there, and what happened was, you brought up a good point. I have an above genius level IQ.
Yeah.
I had members of the National Security Agency security teams, and you know about them, right?
Oh yeah.
They are the men in black.
Hmm.
People do not realize that it's not really an alien thing. These people are humans, but they run security. Um, it's an umbrella. The NSA security division is more of an umbrella organization than what they are specifically for the NSA. And what happened was, when I worked at the cafeteria, I was a pot washer, and I'd be back there doing my thing, washing the pots. And then these two guys were wearing black suits with either yellow or white shirts, or dark sunglasses, and black ties. They would come in, put their arms around me like that, and say, "Hey, Paul, do you like working here?" And I go, I didn't know who these guys were, and I thought they were awesome. They were friendly. And I said, "I love it here. I love working at Nest." And they go, "Good, good. That's good to hear." Ironically, what happened is, I was oblivious to what was going on out there, very oblivious, but my coworkers weren't. They knew who these guys were. I had no idea who they were. And they wouldn't talk to me for 2 weeks after that, but every 3 weeks while I was there employed, these men would come in and check in on me.
Oh, why,
And
why do you think they were checking in on you? Did were Maybe.
I was told why. I was going to get to that right
Oh, God.
now.
Okay. That's amazing.
You
I have
brought it.
lots of reasons why I run around my head right now.
Well, they originally thought that I was a spy, either corporate espionage or working for a foreign actor,
Okay.
because they couldn't understand why somebody with an above genius level IQ, because they had run, as you know, if you go to work for any government facility, they run a comprehensive background check on
Absolutely.
you.
Yep.
And they knew everything about me, and they're wondering, why is this guy with a genius level IQ? What's he doing working in the cafeteria?
Yeah.
They didn't know that I just had a wanton desire to be in the space program one way or the other.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And what happened was when I got terminated, I I don't know if you understand this, but I knew how to get to the building 8 clinic at JSC from the cafeteria. But that one day, I had a memory fart where it just went like that. I couldn't remember where to go.
Wow.
It was weird.
Hmm.
I went down to the Mission Control Center. They sent me all the way down to the other end, and then I talked to somebody, and then they would send me back here. And then I'm just frustrated. I'm going. I have to go in for my yearly physical. How do I get here? And then I met a guy who was an engineer by the name of John Evans. Well, John and I, he takes me there, and he goes, "What are you doing here?" I go, "I'm working the cafeteria." And I ask him, "What do you do here?" Life Support Sciences Directorate. And I said, "So you work on spacesuits and life support?" And he looked at me, and goes, "How do you know that?" I go, "Hey, I'm kind of a space case." And I told him that, and he goes, and I said, "You're an engineer?" And he goes, "Yes." I said, "This idea keeps popping in my head, and I don't even know if it will work or anything." Well, he goes, "Tell me what it is." He goes, I said, "The electromagnetic pulse reaction engine." He goes, "Shh, keep it down. We don't want everybody to hear." And I'm
Wow.
looking at him, like, "What?" And he goes, "Draw it out for me." And I drew it out for him. He goes, "Okay." He took it with him. Nothing said. I found out later John Evans was not in the Life Sciences Directorate. He worked for NASA Security.
Hmm.
But what happened was I get there, get my yearly physical done. I had a bit of the flu, but I went back to work. And within 3 weeks after I discussed it with that man, I was terminated for breaking 10 dishes and for being insubordinate. And I had never been insubordinate, and breaking the 10 dishes was accidental. They don't fire somebody because of that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 1 week before my actual termination happened that Ron Jeffries, my friend, came to me at the cafeteria. He goes, "You should shut up and be quiet." I'm going, "Shut up about what?" He goes, "You know what?" And I go, "No." I had no idea.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Okay." I said, "Okay, I won't say anything again." He goes, "Good. That's good to hear. Don't." And he told me later after my termination what happened. And then that led me on my research into the field of electromagnetic systems design, the physics behind it,
Hmm.
and then later on led to the theories that I've done currently with anti-gravity systems and counter gravity propulsion.
Wow. I've looked through some of that already, and it's stunning. It's stunning what you're into. Now, so you left NASA, and then you started off on your own. What happened after that?
Well, I did other odd jobs. I was a pot washer, so I went to Pull Folks Restaurant that is no longer in business, but it was in Pasadena. Went to work for them. Went to work for different other things, from doing telemarketing to lawn care. And all that time, Michael, I had people from the federal government watching me.
Yeah.
Um, do you mind if I could mention a name right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know who Dr. Ronald Pandolfi is?
No.
He was He was one of the heads of the life science or the science and technology directorate at the CIA.
Hmm.
He was in charge of what they call the Weird Desk. The Spooky Files, the Ronald Gandolfi character is based on Ron Pandolfi. But for years, they had been watching me, even since I was a child. They had run after that incident at Camp Hero. And if you don't mind me segueing into that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Tell us about Camp Hero. I'm not quite up to speed on what that is. I've heard about it.
Well, you've heard about the Montauk Project, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I was considered technically one of the Montauk boys.
Wow.
And here's what happened. When I lived in Missoula, Montana, when I was 7 years old, I got extremely bored doing the work. When you have a kid who's got an above genius level IQ and he knows how to do it, he just goes, I don't want to do this. It doesn't stimulate my brain. I
Yep.
would rather look out a window and see a bird fly and try to figure out the mechanics behind that than to
Awesome.
sit there and do basic math. And I'm going, and spelling, and so they were wondering, oh no, this poor boy has got, may have a psychological problem. He doesn't want to do the work. That was their excuse. But here's what happened. I didn't know this until years later. But the CIA was sponsoring under the MK Ultra program.
Yeah.
Under that umbrella, where they were picking out gifted children.
Yep.
And so they had me brought in and tested. They ran a gambit of tests on me from physical test, intelligence quotient test, and several others. One of the tests they did on me was done by Dr. Hal Putoff and Russell Targ, were the chief, I don't know what you would call it, the overseers of the test. But then a Frank Hines, who later became an astronaut working on the space shuttle program, ran the test on me. You've heard of the Zener card test, have you not?
No.
Okay, it's the card deck that has a blank face on one side and a symbol on the other.
Okay. Yep.
Has circles, wavy lines, triangles, squares. Yeah. Well, and then they show you the card so you can get imprinted on what it is that you're supposed to be guessing. Well, it's when the law of statistics always says out of every 45 cards, you're going to guess one of them correctly. But when you actually either make all of them or miss all of them, that becomes a statistical anomaly. And I missed all of them, mind you, but here's the ironic part. When they evaluated the test results, they found out that I was five ahead in the sequence.
Wow.
And remember,
I'm gonna share the screen real quick, and here's Hal Putoff. You mentioned some very significant names. It says American electrical engineer and parapsychologist, known for his work in laser physics, remote viewing research, and theories on zero-point energy, which you're going to talk a little bit more in detail about here pretty soon. Well,
yeah, and let me tell you though, what happened was they went and paid my father at the time, and I don't know how much that would be worth now. But in 1975, at that time, they paid my father $250,000.
That's a lot.
To take me on a road trip out to New York. we get out there, and I remember sporadically what it was that we did. We went through all the buildings at Camp Hero. We went into the weird building, which they had it painted so they could do tests on LSD at the building.
Right.
And I said, Dad, what is? And I was telling my dad, what is this? And he goes, I don't know. But my dad was a kind of a salty fellow. He goes, this is pretty effed up. And I go, yeah. And then we went to the cafeteria, got a bite to eat. I remember that they stripped me down to my underwear. And they put me in what I thought was a chicken coop. It was in a nondescript building. There were no speakers from what I remember. But they put me in a chicken coop. And it wasn't until years later when I talked to the late Mark McCandlish, and I think you've heard of him, have you not?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And by the way, just to tell your listeners, he didn't kill himself. I know that for a fact.
Wow.
He was murdered. Yeah. But he told me, he goes, I said, I remember that it looked like a chicken coop. And he goes, that was a Faraday cage. And I thought about it and I go, but as a 7-year-old, you don't know about these things. They just put me in there for about 18 hours. Laying on my back, I would start to doze off. And like I said, there were cameras in there, but no speakers. But an audible voice came into my head and said, wake up. And I went, okay. And then every 30 to 45 minutes, I'd doze off again, and the same thing would happen over and over again. Ironically, my father, like I said, you being a former Navy SEAL and CIA guy,
yeah.
My father had specialized training. In fact, he trained at Camp Hero before he went out to Vietnam.
Yeah.
As an operator. And it's kind of weird. Like I said, I have certain capabilities that not even when I was a child, I really could understand or recognize. Now that I'm older, I do understand them. But there were no windows in the building. However, I heard yelling, turned to my left side, and could see out the wall.
Wow.
Okay. My father had one of the, had his 45 caliber Smith & Wesson and held it. He was telling the people, the scientists doing the test, get him the F out of there right now or I'll kill all of you. And there was somebody who was in military fatigues who had I think it was probably an M16 aimed at him, and the scientist said, no, calm down, because my father had a gun to his head. And they finally let me go, and then we left, and for years I forgot about it. But I do remember specifically that my father told my two older sisters when I was a boy, if any unmarked car or anybody tries to pick up your brother Rick, which Rick is my nickname, don't walk, drag him if you have to, but don't walk, run, and don't stop until you get back home. Because he was afraid that they were going to kidnap me and then put me into a I guess, a training program is what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Well,
now what I'd like the audience to know is it sounds traumatizing, and it is on purpose, because gifted people like Paul are traumatized, which makes their abilities even better, which is odd, but it does. A lot of people have had a lot of people on with your, extreme intelligence level, Paul, and they talked about these programs, the MK Ultra and so forth. Now, also, there's a guy that was there. He might have been during your time frame, and maybe you've heard about him. He was a chrononaut and basically a time traveler as a little boy, and they would send him back in time or forward in time. Andrew Basago. And basically,
you mean Basiago? That's his last name.
Basiago.
I know him.
Yeah. So let me share the screen real quick. He said that he was at the Gettysburg Address, and there was a picture later that was found, and that supposedly is him right there with these big shoes on, because he said when he went through the time portal, he lost his shoes and he was barefoot, and someone gave him these oversized shoes, and then this picture comes out. Wow, pretty crazy stuff they were doing there.
Well, I don't remember the time travel thing, and that wasn't really part of what I was involved with.
Sure. Yeah.
I was more involved with that they were trying to train younger kids to become remote viewers.
Mm-hmm.
I had a natural aptitude for it. I didn't have, there are some people that need to be trained,
Right.
others that come through with it due to genetics. And let me give you a little bit of a background on my family history. On my mother's side, her maiden name was Chandler. And if you know anything about given surnames, Chandler means channeling. And so back in England, where my mom's family originated from, they were part of the Druid high priesthood, which they were channelers. They channeled the spirits of the dead.
Yep.
On my grandmother's side, on my father's side, we are directly related to the Windsors in England, as well as we are from the French nobility and Germanic nobility. And also I have a smidgen of Italian in me.
Nice.
So
You're a mutt like me. Good.
that's rough. But no, I mean, because of that, it made me susceptible to psychic abilities.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to mess around with things, I can remotely influence people, if you know what I'm talking about.
I do. I've done it. Yeah.
But I didn't have to be trained. All I had to do is have an intense thought, focus it on one person.
Yeah.
And ironically, I trained a former friend of mine when we were in high school together how to communicate with me without speaking.
Yeah.
Through a psychic, we had a bond, I'll put it that way, and I trained her on how to use it.
Yeah, we're very similar in a lot of ways. I'm seeing that. So yeah, I've done all that too. That's pretty impressive. I'm not genius level though, or at least I don't know. But you're quite phenomenal in a lot of different areas. So this is a great background on you that people can see, why you may have been, or why they not may have been, you were, and picked for these programs. And then once you're in these programs, and then you move on in life, and you're just like thinking you're just surviving, doing kitchen work and so forth. They're keeping an eye on you, and who knows, maybe they're even tapping you. I think they probably tapped you for a lot of information over the years.
I hate that. I hate that with a freaking passion.
Absolutely.
And here's why. I have one scientist friend of mine who keeps claiming that I'm remotely viewing concepts that I actually came up with on my own. What's happening right now is one of the concepts I came up with was called the price principle. It's a mathematical formulation that helps you sequence a magnetic torus. And speaking of zero-point energy, what this does, in effect, is that you have random fluctuations of random virtual particles in the zero-point field. The idea is to coalesce these random particles to where they can be converted into useful, productive electrical transmission. In order to do that, you have to generate a rotating either magnetic field or plasma. You do so in a torus, or for the listeners, think about a donut. That's what a torus is, in effect.
Yep.
But it's not something you go to Krispy Kreme and eat. It's actually a field matrix that you can actually use. But the problem is stabilizing the field matrix so you can draw energy potential from the vacuum. And unless you have an idea of how to construct the frequencies within the field, you're not going to have a stable enough field to generate an effect. And that's where the price principle came in. And it's an 8-point principle that allows you to pulse varying frequencies into the torus field that allow for the conjugation of 0-point energy flux. I hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the toroidal field.
But yes, and the thing is, if you really want to generate a sustainable anti-gravity or counter-gravitational effect, you generate a torus. Because what that does, let me show you here. Think about space generally, and the field matrix is generally flat. When you're getting a torus, you cause it to flex.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but it's spinning. It generates an impeller type effect. But there's a secondary thing. And we could get into warp drive right now real quickly.
Yeah.
What you want to do is project a torus around the craft that's producing the torus. When you project that field around the craft generating the torus, then you have what's within that field, null space. And null space basically is it's nullified. You're not accelerating, you're not decelerating. In effect, you're standing still. If you want to use transdimensional space, that's one thing you can use as well. But if you're dealing with that, what you're dealing with is that you're generating, and not only that, but you're spinning the field as well. You're generating a warping field. You don't need as much energy to generate the field because you're pulling energy out of the 0 point or the vacuum, or what I call the etheric space, or even what in the paper I did, I called it protomatter. There is still protomatter out there that permeates the universe, but because of the fact that we don't have detectors that can generally detect this etheric field, and the protomatter is really cold plasma or a plasma type field itself. We have a hard time generating detectors that can effectively detect it. So in effect, what we're doing is using that potential energy and the field itself to generate a warp conduit, which is basically, if you want to use this, you're generating a portable wormhole.
Wow.
And the thing is, inside that null space, you're stationary. However, the field fluxes and you're going faster and faster and faster, or the field itself is. And there you can reach near light speed or even above. And it still bypasses Einstein's speed of light limitations. However, let's get to a point here. Why is it that they're not allowing this technology to come out? You're a former Navy SEAL and military man. Mm-hmm. What would happen if you had a warp technology and you're the military?
Well, you could appear in a lot of places where you would have to go through combat zones where they could detect you and kill you. But if you just appear in some place, you could extract somebody, just grab them, and you're in and out. So that's one of the ways I would consider doing it.
Well, here's the other thing you're not looking at. You're carrying a weapon. You're delivering a weapons platform.
Mm-hmm.
You get first strike capability,
Absolutely.
and they've already proven that with the TR-3B Black Mana program.
Mm.
They were using reportedly the TR-3B during the Gulf War One and the follow-on with that,
Wow.
where they were delivering ordnance. They would pop in and then pull out. What we're looking at, though, is that we do not want our adversaries and even our friends to get this technology. We want to have command control over that tech and keep it out of the hands of people that might use it against us one day. And the thing about it is, I'm really kind of perturbed about that because, in my opinion, we need this technology to help us get back to the moon, beyond the moon, back to Mars, or to Mars, whether or not you believe that we have a base on Mars or not, and be able to use the system, the reactor systems, to generate a way of generating energy that's pollution free,
Mm-hmm.
and it may have some residual radiation effects. However, that can be dealt with. You can have a reactor the size pretty much like this and this that could power your home indefinitely.
Yeah.
Without having to hook up to the grid.
Yep. 0 point energy.
You could
Good.
put one of these, yeah, you could put one of these in a Tesla or electric car. You would not ever need to recharge.
Wow.
Because it doesn't violate the laws of thermodynamics, and here's why. You're not putting nothing in and getting something out.
Mm-hmm.
You're drawing the energy directly from the vacuum. Therefore, you're pulling it out of the vacuum and then reconverting it into electricity.
Wow.
Part of what I see
So
happening with
one thing that's happening right now with aircraft, jets and so forth, they just need enough fuel to take off, and then they're using the ether basically, because if they were using all the fuel that they say they were using, they'd have like tankers. Yeah. So what is that correct? Is they're using ether to basically run those engines once they get up to altitude?
well, they're not going to call it ether because it violates Einstein's theory of relativity.
Hmm.
Yes, they are, but they're going to use the term quantum vacuum.
Okay.
But here's another interesting part of my life story that I'd like to segue into. You've heard of Thomas Townsend Brown, have you not?
No.
Back in 1971, when I was a young boy, we lived in Oceanside, California.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom decided that she wanted to take us kids to Catalina Island.
Mm.
And we were all young kids at the time. And you got to understand, when a little boy is about three and a half, 4 years old, his bladder is the size of a walnut.
Oh yeah.
So we get out to Catalina Island. My father didn't want to spend the money on taking us to a restaurant to just buy drinks so we could use the bathroom. So he had my mom knock on every door, and people said, no, except for one woman. She answers the door, and she goes, hold on, let me check with my husband. I'll get back to you. She comes in there. She goes, go ahead, you can use the bathroom. And I went to run to use the bathroom. She goes, boy, get back here. Let your siblings go first. And I'm going like, oh, my goodness. And then finally I got to go in and, relieve myself. And then she was asking my parents, can you tell me about your kids? And my dad said about my oldest sister, my second oldest sister, and then he came to me and he goes, my boy loves space and he loves science. And she goes, hold it here. My husband's a scientist. do you think your boy would like to meet him? And I hurried up out of the bathroom, and he goes, I said, yes, ma'am. And he goes, wait, let me go back there. And I go back there and to his lab that was behind the home. And his name was Thomas Townsend Brown.
Wow.
And I remember the guy, he was one of the nicest men I ever met. And he was working on a rare earth mineral fuel cell. And I remember he got a voltmeter. He goes, do you know that certain rocks, and here I am, a 3-year-old boy. He goes, do you know that certain rocks hold a charge? And I go, no. He goes, look at this. And he put the voltmeter on it. And I'm going, wow. And he goes, wow. He goes, that's cool, ain't it? And I go, yeah, it is. So he knew how to talk to even a 3-year-old boy back then. Yeah, I met Thomas Townsend Brown. And I didn't know what he was doing at the time. I had no idea. His wife never told us about what he had done, other than that he was a scientist working. And I didn't find out until later, and we can talk about this. You remember NICAP, the National something for Aerial Phenomenon? Thomas Townsend Brown founded that organization. It was one of the original UFO research organizations. And I had no idea who this guy was until years later, and I read up about him. And it turns out he was working on electrogravitics, which, if you induce a charge in a capacitor, it will tend to lose weight. And it was called the Byfield-Brown effect. Paul Byfield was the professor at the college that Brown had been attending, and Brown was the actual discoverer. Paul Byfield added his name so he could give credibility to Brown's work. Well, I'd found out later, and through a contact I made, Paul, I'm going to butcher his name, forgive me, LaViolette.
Yeah, LaViolette. Wow.
Yeah. He did a paper, his doctoral dissertation, on the B-2 stealth bomber being an electrogravitic craft. Now, let's go back to the Roswell incident in 1947. My dad, he's now passed, but he was one of the last living Roswell witnesses.
Wow.
And he picked up debris, brought it home, and I could tell you more about that. Let's just say a certain company by the name of Kepler Aerospace may have, and I'm going to put that in quotes, may have actually acquired that material, and they used it as a bargaining chip, from what I'm understanding, from my father's old farm site in Deming, or not in Midland, New Mexico, Midway, and used it to get DARPA funded research grants. But my father brought that in. Thomas Townsend Brown, when he formed NICAP, wanted to research UFOs because they actually were the confirmation of his life's work in electrogravitics. However, Paul LaViolette did his doctoral dissertation showing that Brown's work was directly correlated to the work done on the B-2 stealth bomber, and that it used a charge at the leading edge of the wings to be able to generate lift without having to use the jets. And it also had a secondary effect. That particular function allowed them to have a stealth capability, because you're generating a plasma field, which disrupts radar from going through. Well, I remember that, like I said, I met Brown. I didn't know who he was. I was just a little boy back then. But I remembered that situation happening. And the only reason why, honestly, that I think I remembered it, believe it or not, was the fact that it imprinted on my mind after I had to go to the bathroom, had to wait. Having to deal with that kind of pain, and then you go and meet a guy, and you're in awe. And I was in awe with the guy. I
Wow.
didn't know who he was, but he was a scientist. I love science, so
Yeah, that's cool.
as a child.
So do you think he was
But
scoping, do you think he was scoping you out, Paul?
you mean Brown?
Yeah. Do you think it was like checking up on you? Maybe they'd already seen that you're like have capability, so he comes in to check you
Well,
on.
I believe that I don't believe in coincidences.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
but let me do a preface here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
And I'm going to go fast forward to 1999, 2000 timeframe. But there's a part of that story that it goes back to even before I was born.
Mm.
I met a man who intentionally wanted to meet me. He was a professor of psychology at San Antonio College in San Antonio, Texas,
Mm.
where I was working on getting an electric or computer science degree.
Nice.
And his name he's passed away now, was William R. Rose. He went by Billy Rose. He had a PhD in theoretical physics and a master's in psychology. Billy wrote a book called The Future of Existence. He was murdered in 2012 after working with Dr. Stephen Greer on an anti-gravity system. Billy Rose worked for classified projects at Area 51, as well as other government contractors, and civilian contractors. What happened to him was really sad. He died in 2012 after I introduced him to Stephen Greer. He was starting to work with Stephen on a project, and then they claimed he committed suicide. The first claim. The second claim, he fell in the shower, and then now it's come out that he was murdered. He had a broken collarbone, a shattered neck and skull. He had injuries that were analogous to getting into a high speed wreck. Like if you're driving a car at around 100 miles per hour into a wall, a brick wall. The reason why I believe there's not been any further information about it, but from my discussions with his former wife and all, he was talking too much.
Mm.
He was revealing information he was told not to reveal. Part of that information comes to what I'm about to tell you. And when I met him, he had my friend Donald Pipkin introduce me to him. And for years, he and I had a friendship. At the time, and I know a lot of people have a hard time believing this, but I was being watched very closely by unmarked military helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to a point where it got so prevalent that I was starting to wave at the pilots, and I had one of the pilots do this to me and smile. And I thought, well, this is nice. And they were protecting me is what they were doing.
Really? Oh, wow.
I didn't know why. And then I had Navy
I've
SEALs.
unfortunately had the opposite experience, but had the heart attack machine on me one time. But yeah, that's good they were protecting you. I can see that.
Well, and let me explain why.
Yeah, okay.
what happened is Billy explained it to me later on. He wasn't supposed to tell me anything.
Hmm.
But I kind of prodded him until he finally broke. The first time I asked him, I said, why are the helicopters following me? And he goes, I know, but I can't tell you. And I go, that ain't cool. But he goes, I want you to look up indigo children. And I go,
Hmm.
okay.
Wow.
What a unique question. So I went and looked it up, indigo children. And I went back to him and I said, so Billy, are you saying that I'm a star child? And he goes, what do you think? And I go, he's
Wow.
answering me with a freaking question. Well, then later on, I asked him about a year and a half later again. I said, Billy, can you give me at least something to work with? He goes, if I tell you it's going to affect the timeline.
Oh, wow.
But he goes, I will tell you what I can. He goes, your father was a Roswell witness, correct? I go, yeah. He goes, what if I was to tell you that the Roswell craft wasn't an alien spacecraft? What if I was to tell you that it was a time machine?
Whoa.
And I go, and I tracked with that. I heard that theory before.
Sure.
And he goes, what if I was to tell you that we tried to back engineer it,
Mm-hmm.
but we weren't successful at it? And I go, okay. And he goes, have you heard of Project Looking Glass? And I go, no. He goes, Looking Glass was a derivative of the technology, of the back engineered technology that we were able to glean from the Roswell engine.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, we can see into 12 different scenarios using multiversal theory.
Wow. Hmm.
And I went, okay. And I understood physics in the multiverse. And he goes, what if I was to tell you that we got reports and that your name came up on every single report? And I went, huh? And he goes, I can't tell you anymore. It may have already adversely affected the timeline. He goes, you'll have to find out more on your own. And I go, okay. I said, thank you. And then I asked him,
So,
can you,
Paul,
yeah,
I've heard that that's fascinating. I've heard that Montauk had some kind of back engineered from that crash. Time that's how they sent people back in time and forward in time. So, do you think maybe he wasn't giving you all the information, or were you?
well, he was the original technician on the Looking Glass program.
Yeah,
Billy
wow,
was.
incredible.
And Billy wouldn't give me all the information, but I did probe him about it even further. I said, can you just give me an idea? He goes, what you're going to do is geopolitical in nature. But he goes, I'm not going to tell you anymore. So, yes, he did keep it quiet. Now I'm trying to ponder what he meant by geopolitical.
Yeah.
But he kept using terms when he would talk to me inadvertently about the term chosen one. And that made me realize as to why the military was watching me, and why maybe Brown and that whole thing worked out the way it did. And why the people at NASA, the NSA security detail, why they were watching me at the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew something that I didn't know, that I had a reason and a specific purpose. One of my contacts who is involved with the core group, and did you read the information that I sent you about core?
I I went over it now. You if they gave you the money, you could do these projects you're talking about, a lot of this stuff.
Oh, they're keeping me from getting the funding.
Yeah.
And Ron Pandolfi told my brother-in-law in a text chat
Mm,
when he went to my brother-in-law, who's an alcoholic, Patrick,
mm.
who was trying to get me to pay him money, and he uses it to buy alcohol. He told Patrick in a text, and he forwarded me the text, where he said that I'm a national security asset and that I'm living under a cover of poverty for my own protection. You worked for the agency. What does it sound like to you?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally believe that you're absolutely a national asset, and we've only been talking about an hour now, and I'm like, holy smokes, why are you being kept, like you said, for your own protection? At some point, are you going to be like, given the green light to go forward? You think that's coming?
You know what? I could build a prototype
Yeah,
if I got the funding now.
right now, and it wouldn't be that
Right
much.
now.
What do you need? Like 7 mil? It's like, let me go check my back pocket. Maybe I got that much for you, but it's
What if
crazy.
I were to tell you that it wouldn't even cost that much to get a working proof of concept done?
That's like
What if
that's
I were
not
to
even a
tell
drop
you,
in a bucket for our government military industrial complex. That's crazy.
here's the reason? You brought up the military industrial complex. Let me explain why they are keeping me from being able to do it. They want the core group, which is the offshoot of the UFO working group back in the 1980s, which are in effect the modern day version of the Majestic Group.
Oh wow.
In fact, the Majestic Group, founders of that group, pardon me, later founded the Meter Group. You've heard of that group, have you not?
There's so many groups out there. I haven't heard of the meter group, but
It's
go ahead.
it's a think tank, a
Okay.
scientific think tank
Nice.
dealing with. They look into multiple scenarios. One is alternative sciences.
Hmm.
CORE, which used to be known under the auspices of the UFO Working Group, at its core, pardon the pun, uh, Ronald Pandolfi is a part of that. Um, John Brandenburg is the other co-lead on that. Hal Puthoff
Mm.
and Dr. Kit Green. And the UFO Working Group used to be led by Lieutenant Colonel John Alexander, PhD. If you know anything about John Alexander, he was the founder of the military's non-lethal weapons program.
Wow. Hmm.
And I know John. I know if you've heard of the Aviary Group, the members of CORE were members of the Aviary Group.
Wow.
In effect, what CORE is doing now is what Majestic was tasked to do earlier. The thing is, Majestic 12 or the Majestic Group or Magi are now no longer a U.S. Group. They are now international.
Hmm.
They have international members
Interesting.
because the UAP UFO phenomenon isn't only a problem within the United States, but nationwide or international. Its scope is international. Therefore, what we're looking at, Michael, is that you have, in my opinion, and I'm going to get to the crux of the matter as to why we currently have a classification not only on the UAP situation, but also on the development of anti gravity. There's one word for it, or actually one sentence, pardon me. The military industrial complex. And it's not only here in the United States, it's the international military industrial complex.
Interesting. Hmm.
In other words, you've heard of the Invention Secrecy Act, have you not?
Yes.
1951.
Nope.
I tried to patent one of my ideas called the electromagnetic vortex reactor back in 1989. I had a patent pending on it.
Wow.
I received a letter in the mail when I received the notification of the patent pending that my design had been reviewed and they had limited the dissemination of the plans. I could get a foreign filing license, but I could not sell it overseas without going through a defense contractor.
Wow.
Here's the point. What a lot of people don't realize is that if you're going to invent something, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a disruptive, groundbreaking technology, whatever you do, don't send it to the U.S. Patent Office. Don't do it. Develop everything internally within the organization you're working with the company.
Mm-hmm.
Through firewalls and other methods, protect your patent, but don't get a patent, or protect your invention, but don't get a patent on it. Because once they review your patent, they can slap a security restriction on it.
Yeah.
You don't get paid. You're told you cannot talk about it, and they can develop it through their contractors.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea, Paul. But I actually know several people that have developed just like you're talking about, and they came in and seized it. So and it's the same thing, national security, type. They have carte blanche on this stuff. It's crazy.
Well, the only problem that we're looking at, Michael, is the fact, though, that they're feeding all this information. That's what happened with me in the work I did. Mm-hmm. You brought up earlier that they've been gleaming stuff from me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure
they have, and I'm not very happy with that. I'm right now, unfortunately, living in abject poverty because these a-holes,
right?
And I'm trying not to say the other word, have taken my designs and all, have capitalized on them. They have taken parts of my theory, and they have, after one, Dr. Brandenburg and Paul Murad, the late Paul Murad, the electrical engineer and former DIA analyst. I was doing a paper, wanted them to review the paper and the formulations. I'd worked on it, and they both said, "We can't make hide nor hair of these equations you're coming up with." But guess what I found? They used them later in their own work.
Of course they did.
Stole.
Wow.
And
that happens all the time too. I mean, all across the board. I mean, I've had people that have written scripts and Hollywood scripts and had it stolen. The Matrix is stolen. I have the guy on all the time that talks about that. So there's a lot of that going on. It's just nuts. And even in the field we're talking about right now, it's like a staggering. Wow.
Well, and you know what? I have a daughter I love to death. I'm not going to mention her name because unfortunately the girl made mistakes. One of them was getting involved with an MS-13 gang member. Geez, that's a story all in of itself, and I had to pull her out. I had her pulled out of that. Good. So she was in witness protection. So I'm not going to mention her name right now on the air. But I have 3 grandsons as well. My oldest grandson wants to be like his grandpa.
Oh, awesome!
And I want to be able to leave something for my family.
Yeah, of course.
And to have all the work that I have worked so hard on taken from me and stolen so they can, quote, protect me, it gets beyond the pale. It becomes ludicrous.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hate people. I actually want to be a man of peace.
Yeah.
But it does get quite frustrating after all. I've been working on this in this field for over 36 years, since right before my daughter was born. And I want to have something that I can leave for my progeny.
Yeah.
And right now, because of whatever they want to do or are doing, They're keeping me from being able to do that, and it's become quite um, disheartening. I'll put it that way.
Well, you've
Okay.
actually I have on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got your book Tyrus, the Spooky Files, and it looks like a, a photo of some guys on the table with some grays that are standing around. It looks like tall grays, I guess. So, what this could be something that helps you out in the future. Tell us a little bit about your work.
Well, Tyrus is an interesting story. It's kind of like the predecessor to the Prophecy Chronicles series that I wrote years before and had, believe it or not, my royalties stolen from me by a nonprofit run by a member of the CIA. That's a story I'll get into if you want to later.
Yeah,
But
we should do another show because there's so much more information that we haven't even touched on yet. So, I would love to see you, get a little bit of income coming in. When are these supposedly coming out?
they're already out.
Oh, they're already out. Okay. Are they on
Yeah,
Amazon or?
well, I would say I wouldn't go to Amazon because the publisher that I'm using, they priced it so low that I don't make any royalties from the
Oh,
Amazon or
geez.
Walmart.
Yeah,
But
Amazon's
I,
tough. Yeah,
I did give you,
they'll steal your work too. They've done that.
oh, they did.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I could get into that, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But you can go directly. I don't know. Do you have the link? I did
No,
send you a
I
link.
probably do with all because there was a lot of stuff I got from you. Uh, After this show, I'm going to post this and make sure we got your links, any links that you want, social media, whatever you got. We'll put them in the description box so people can, check out your work. And if you have contact information or anything like that,
And
nice,
here's Tyrus the book.
beautiful.
And Tyrus is about a clone, a
Mm,
hybrid clone
interesting.
who's part Nephilim and was also cloned from the DNA from Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Secret societies are looking for him because they believe that he will be the prophesied chosen one.
Mm,
The book incorporates the occult, secret societies, covert government operations to explain how one man using self sacrifice can save the world.
wow.
I'm not going to get into the whole story. You have
Yeah,
to
that
buy it.
sounds incredible. And coming from
And,
somebody that knows behind the scenes stuff, so that's going to be a fascinating read.
and the Spooky Files. It's a fictionalized story, believe it or not, of the precursor story of the aviary group.
Hmm.
The names have been changed to protect the guilty. Pardon the pun. But it's a story about a CIA analyst by the name of Ron who went in and was doing a covert operation where he accidentally killed a child.
Hmm.
And when he came back to Langley, they put him into purgatory, into the vault,
Hmm.
where he was told to go in there and file reports and put them in there in the filing cabinet. Well, while he's down there, he runs into a former psychologist who worked in the MK Ultra program, who was a neurophysiologist, who pulled out this file called the Spooky Files and said, "Let's take some time off and take a road trip and investigate these classified paranormal files." In the book, it deals with alien abductions at Area 51,
Hmm.
Bigfoot in the Northwest, and
Yep.
the Loch Ness Monster and the Soviet Union.
Good God. Oh my God. I'm looking forward to reading both those books. Now, there's also that picture of the tall grays. What's that about?
Well, that's a rendition I had AI do of the from the spooky files
Okay.
out at Area 51.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the whole thing is that the best way to bring out truth without stepping on certain toes is to go ahead and do so using fiction.
Yeah. There you go.
And I've done that with both the Spooky Files and with the Tyrus book.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with things that deal with esoteric information that certain people do not want to be gotten out. And one thing before we end the interview for this time as a juicy precursor to the next
Oh, good.
interview,
All right.
I have been invited to join the Masonic Order. In fact, a 33rd and a third degree Mason tried to recruit me into the Masons. I had a weird meeting with a certain billionaire who was riding the same bus I was riding. And I was talking about my anti-gravity stuff. I need funding. Like I always tell people, I need funding. And the guy came up from the center of the bus, came up and said, I'm interested. He was an older gentleman. I'm interested. Tell me more.
Wow.
So I went out through the whole dissertation. He goes, do you know who I am? And I go, no. He goes, do you know who Warren Buffett is? And I go, yeah. You're speaking with him. What do you know about Warren? He's one of the richest men in the world. Exactly, he said.
Wow.
And then I'm going, and I'm being, I'll admit I'm being a little bit skeptical at the time. I'm going, yeah, sure, you're Warren Buffett. And then here's what happened. It's hilarious. He goes, you can ask me any question, I'll answer it. So I asked him, before I could ask the very first question, he goes, I know what you're going to ask. Why is Warren Buffett riding on a bus? And he goes, I said, yeah, that thought crossed my mind. And he goes, how do you think I became rich? I go, you didn't spend money? He goes, exactly. And he goes, Berkshire Hathaway at the time in the 80s and or 80s, 90s, and early 2000s had went to a different city around the country for their stockholders meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Is what he told me. He goes, and I like riding the bus, get to meet interesting people like yourself, and we exchanged information at that point. And I was living in government housing at the time. And I received a letter from the Friends of Bilderberg, from Charlie Moore, the former head who's now passed away. And it was a official invitation to the Bilderberg meeting in Calgary, Alberta, Canada in 1998. And I thought it was bull. But it turns out, I didn't know it at the time, but Warren Buffett is a member of the Bilderberg group.
Mm-hmm.
And he was arranging for me to go so I could try to get funding for my research.
Wow.
And that's another connection, another segue we could get into.
Yeah. Do you think those guys would have let you, keep some of that wealth, or were they just going to like rob you like everybody else? What do you think?
I think they had another scenario in mind.
Good intentions?
I don't know if it's good, but it was their intentions. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
They knew about the Looking Glass reports.
Yeah, I've heard there's like two different. The good guys have it and the bad guys have it.
Well, they were wanting me to fulfill my destiny because they believe for some reason I have an important destiny. And that's why I think I met Warren Buffett.
Sure.
It wasn't by accident that he showed up there and came to talk to me, the crazy guy up front, talking about anti-gravity to my friend David. And all I'm thinking is he was set there. And also when I met the 33rd degree Mason working, selling home improvement products at Sam's Club, the guy came up to me and goes, I'm not going to buy what you're selling. He goes, have you ever thought about joining the Masons? No. he showed me, he was an aerospace engineer, showed me his identity card, Masonic ID card. And he told me a bit about Sam Walton and how Sam started Sam's Club.
Yeah.
He got a loan from the Masonic Order.
Oh, wow.
Interesting information. I didn't know before.
I didn't know they
He
did.
goes, and he goes,
And I've read all about Sam Walton. That's fascinating. That makes sense, though.
And he was a Mason, and he showed me pictures of Sam and him before Sam passed away. He and Sam at a lodge meeting. Inside the lodge, they were drinking and all. I go, okay, that's cool. But he had approached me about joining, and they don't go to anybody and approach them about joining the order.
They don't. I grew up in a family of Masons and Shriners, and they said if you want to get involved, you can. Well, we're not going to push it, and no one's going to ever push it on you. And I was like, okay.
Well, you tell me, in your opinion, what do you think? Why do you think that they went ahead and approached me to join?
Because they also have insights. Not all Masons are bad. I can tell you that from my family history and some of the Masons I met over the years. There's bad there's bad everywhere, and there's good everywhere. And they've been infiltrated just like everything else. And so you have good Masons, good people on high levels that want to bring out the good stuff, but sometimes they get sabotaged and they sabotage the bad guys. So there's a lot of this going back and forth. So I think the good guys who are keeping you alive and who are interested in helping you succeed, like myself, I'd love to see you succeed, but they have to play by certain rules. It's just crazy. I don't quite comprehend or understand these rules, but I know they exist. So I think that you're, being targeted. Now, I know people that have revealed stuff to like I have this one woman that I know that her husband, who was former Air Force at a very high level, and she didn't know that he was in this program, and he shared it with her one night, and the next day he was gone. So they listen in on us all the time. They came to her, said, whatever, we know what he told you. Do not reveal it. And here's a bunch of money and be quiet. So, wow.
Oh, and also let me tell you this one thing. I've had I was being harassed by a former friend of mine in Montana a while back. I guess it's been about 16 years ago. It's a girl I try to help out of a situation. I have Asperger's. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I see a problem. I want to try to fix it.
Yep.
You can't always fix problems, especially with other people.
Sure.
And you shouldn't. But that didn't fade. She harassed me and tried to have me arrested, her and her cousin one time, and I was brought into the Montana State University police station. I hadn't done anything. But I was harassed by one of this girl's boyfriends who was a cop. They get me in the interrogation room. I'm there for about 3 hours. And the guy was running an NCIC check on me. He called the dispatcher. Did you get that report? And she goes, he has a WCYXN code with 14 digits. I don't remember the actual digits on it. And he goes, what the hell does that mean? And he goes, she goes, Brian, it's a federal do not hold, do not detain order. How the hell did he get that on his file? She goes, I don't know, but if I were you, I would let him go. It won't bode well for you if you don't. So, and I brought that up for a reason. I mean, to me, I think I'm a nobody. I don't think I'm any more special than you or anyone else,
Yeah.
But because of what Looking Glass told people and what the reports have stated.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask you, maybe you can help me glean this. I haven't been able to ascertain what exactly that Billy meant by geopolitical in nature. And what that could mean and what that could possibly entail.
So my impression when I heard that was that you're going to be helping to tear down the old system. So geopolitical. So it's like you've talked about, it's the military industrial complex is actually around the world. Totally makes sense. So that the evil side of that, like we've been talking about, there's good, there's evil. The evil
Yes.
side of that is systematically being taken down. At some point, I believe you're going to be involved when it's safe for you to come out and reveal this information that you know. And I know once you get involved in it, you're going to come up with more and more and more. And there's other people probably going to get involved with you that are different levels. And with that group that you're going to be involved with in the future, I see is going to be substantial in inventing or bringing forth, technologies that have been, kept from us for a long time.
Oh, I agree. And here's what I've been gleaming, even with my abilities, because I'm highly empathic as well.
Yeah.
I can sense emotion and even sometimes read thoughts. For example, John Brandenburg was handed a contract to do a research paper, but they told him, don't apply that to an experiment. Just write it. I believe that they know that there is one person, one inventor from their looking glass reports that will be the one that will bring forth these technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And they're waiting for that one person to be able to do it. Now, I don't know if that's me or whomever it might be, but I would say, honestly, it might be me, but I'm not going to guarantee it. There's been a lot of people putting roadblocks in my path.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Pandolfi did quite a bit. Associates of his at Core were a part of that. They've been gleaming my information, farming it out to other researchers. A group called you've heard of APEC, have you not?
Oh yeah.
Their group is being partially funded through government sources via help from Ron Pandolfi.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been taking ideas that I came up with, as well as several other researchers and inventors, and trying to replicate it. And one of the things is Mark Sokol, the guy who's, quote, the head of the group, may have, from what I've heard, connections to the Israeli Mossad. He's an Orthodox Jew. He has been to Israel. There was a questionable death of an ex-girlfriend of his who died, who was a NASA researcher in the field of anti-gravity. And Ron has been pushing and promoting them over me and has been working diligently to circumvent funding from me into their coffers, Core. And I know that for a fact because, ironically, and we're talking white hat operatives, a member of Core, I don't know who it is, but there's not any of the higher members, but members that have branched out. During two of the Core meetings, remotely accessed Ron's phone, activated it, dialed my number, put it on mute so I could hear the conversation. I was trying to get funding from a venture capital firm about 10 years ago. And I told Ron about it because I needed his help to write a business proposal.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Oh, I'll help you." But then I heard the conversation, the statements in the conversation. I didn't know who else was there. I remember two voices other than Ron's that later on I found out who they were. Clapper and Brennan. They were in on that meeting. And there was a third person I'm going to call Mr. X. I heard his voice. I didn't recognize it, so I don't know who it was.
Okay.
But Ron, they asked him, is he going to get funding? He goes, well, he's talking to a venture capital firm, but I tell you what, I'll make sure to circumvent the funding away from him into our coffers.
Hmm.
And I'm going, you son of a, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So Ron, I think he's the dutiful soldier. He does what he's told to do. And you worked in the agency before. That man was a agent for over 40 years, of an analyst for over 40 years of his life. He was connected to, and you've heard of Gordon Novell, have you not?
Mm-hmm.
Or have you heard of Gordon?
Yeah.
He and Gordon were in like Flynn. They were two peas in the same pod. I knew Gordon before Gordon died.
Hmm.
Gordon tried to protect me from Ron, it turns out later. And there was an assassination attempt that they were a part of a presidential candidate who later on became president that they weren't going to kill, but they wanted to scare him. And I'm not going to say who that candidate was, but let's just say he came from Chicago, Illinois.
Hmm.
And I knew about that. I had to report it to a Secret Service agent by the name of Brian P. O'Neill, and we discussed it and told him what happened. Let's just say that I was being targeted to be the quote patsy in that.
Wow.
And thankfully, thank God above, I got out of California when I did, because it was soon after that particular candidate, they cut his Secret Service contingent down, and they left blind spots open. He was in San Diego, California, doing a rally, and that's where the potential hit was going to happen.
Hmm.
However, because I got out of there and they didn't have a ready-made person to take my place, it stopped it.
Wow.
And I'm thankful, and I thank God above for that.
Hmm.
I remember when Brian asked me, and I had tried to report it. You've heard of Dan Burrish, have you not, or Dan Crane?
Yep.
Well, I tried to email Dan Burrish at his actual email address, and it got blocked, and my email got bounced back. In it, I wrote him and I said I have some information that they may be trying to make me another Lee Harvey Oswald. That's how I wrote the email. Well, it bounced back, so I didn't think he got it. If he did, I'm not sure. But there is some truth to the fact that Dan Crane Burrish was working for the NSA. And here's why I know. Brian P. O'Neill came in about a week and a half later, walked right into my apartment complex, knocked on my door, and Brian P. O'Neill was special agent out of the Billings Secret Service office. He sat down with me in my apartment, talked to me for about 45 minutes, repeated himself ad nauseum, asking me, well, do you want to do any harm to this man? I said, no, sir, I don't. Okay. Well, why didn't you contact us directly? I said, members of the U.S. intelligence community were a part of this. And I said, I want to protect myself and my family. And he goes, I understand. And he repeated the same thing over and over again. I'm not going to go over that too much, but I helped to thwart that, which I'm thinking that Ron and his people are not white hat operatives. They're more like, I don't know if you call them black hat operatives or somewhere in the gray area.
Mm-hmm.
But they have been trying their best. Even Ron tried to get Keith Clore, a journalist that works for Wired magazine. And Keith is a Mockingbird journalist. He's on contract, under contract with the CIA.
Right.
And they were going to run a hit piece on me until, and I'm not going to get into detail about what information I have, until I told him, if you release this information, I've got information on Ron, I'll counter it. So he backed down. But what they're doing is one side is trying to keep me from doing what I need to do, while the other side is trying to do what they can to help promote me.
Right.
And all I just want to be a father, a grandfather, leave something for my family, for my daughter and my grandsons. Pay for my funeral when I die. And live, I guess, I'll never live a quote normal life. Never. I don't think so. I never have. All throughout my school years, I was being watched. We would move around a lot. And every school I go to, a federal government person would come in and do cognitive and IQ tests on me at every school I went to. They were keeping tabs on me even when I was a boy.
Unbelievable.
And one of the last times I had a military helicopter when I lived in Roswell, New Mexico, back in 2007. My father, I won't get into that, but I had to deal with an issue I had with my father. And certain gang members were doing drive-bys towards me because of it. It got to a point where they had a military gunship hovering over my roof with the turret pointed down towards the street.
Jeez.
And I had a witness to that. It happened several times. They were making sure that nothing happened to me. They were protecting me. So I know for a fact that there are people out there, former Navy SEALs, former special operators, who are trying to protect me. And for all those people who are out there, I don't know what your names are and whom you might be, but God bless you and thank you so much. I can't tell you how grateful I am for all the help you gave me and all the effort and time you put out in potentially putting yourself at risk. Thank you so much.
That's beautiful.
So if there's anything more you want to talk about, I'm sorry
there's a lot
I went
more,
off
but
on
let's break it off here, and we'll get this up. We'll get a lot of interest on this one, I'm sure. Maybe more
can I
people
get you
want
to
to
do one thing?
interview you. That'd be great. But yeah, this has been fantastic, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Well, before we do anything, can I give them my GoFundMe page?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll put that in the description box too. Let us know. What is it?
Okay, it's no, it's not GoFundMe. It's GibsonGo.com.
GibsonGo. Okay.
/ Paul Price Funds.
Paul Price Funds. Okay. GibsonGo. Paul Price Funds. Okay. Very good.
Yes. Hey, and I hope that I can talk to you, not being interviewed, but one-on-one one day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know you've talked to my wife quite a bit, so and she's pretty amazed by you. So yeah, that'll be great. Right. Thanks, Paul.
It's been an honor and a pleasure,
Same.
Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.